I was a lonely man walking home through a freezing cold park when I saw a little boy shivering on a bench all alone. I gave him my jacket to keep him warm. He looked up at me with his big, sad eyes and whispered, "My dad told me you would come." I had never seen him before in my... This is a story about a prophecy of kindness and a meeting that was somehow meant to be. Before we get into it, I'd love to know, what city are you watching from today? And be sure to subscribe for our daily stories. Okay, let's head to that park bench. The cold had a way of seeping to your bones in November. It was a wet, creeping cold that the city's bright, indifferent lights did nothing to warm. I was walking home from my job as a financial analyst. Another long, silent, and deeply meaningless day of moving numbers around on a screen. My life, since the accident, had become a series of these empty days, each one a gray, featureless copy of the one before. 3 years ago, a drunk driver had taken my wife and my own 5-year-old son from me in an instant. And in that instant, the world had lost all its color, all its warmth, all its purpose. I existed. I did not live. I was a ghost in my own life, haunted by the phantom echoes of a child's laughter in my quiet, empty apartment. My walk home always took me through the same small, quiet city park. It was a place I both loved and hated, a sanctuary of memories that were both beautiful and agonizing. It was where I had taught my own son how to ride his bike, where my wife and I had had our first picnic. Now it was just a place of ghosts. It was in this park, on this particularly cold and bitter Tuesday night, that I saw him. He was a small, solitary figure on a familiar, empty bench, a little boy, no older than 7, sitting all alone in the encroaching darkness. He was not dressed for the weather. He wore a thin, worn-out hoodie, and his small body was racked with a series of deep, uncontrollable shivers. He wasn't crying. He was just sitting there, staring out into the darkness, a picture of such profound and absolute loneliness that it was a mirror to my own. My first instinct, the one born of 3 years of relentless self-protective grief, was to keep walking. Children were a pain I could not bear. They were a reminder of a door that had been slammed shut in my face forever. But there was something about this boy, about his quiet, still, and almost patient solitude that stopped me in my tracks. He was not just a child, he was a kindred spirit in the vast, cold wilderness of loneliness. I couldn't walk away. I approached his bench slowly, my own footsteps loud in the quiet of the park. "Hey there," I said, a rough, unused thing. "It's pretty cold out here to be all by yourself. Are you okay?" He looked up at me. He had a small, serious face and large, dark, and deeply sad eyes. He did not seem surprised to see me. He just gave a small, shivering nod. "Where are your parents, buddy?" I asked, my own heart beginning to ache with a familiar parental concern I thought had died long ago. He just looked at me, his expression unreadable. I looked at his thin, inadequate hoodie, at the way his small hands were turning a pale, bluish color. And without another thought, I did the only thing I could do. I took off my own heavy, expensive wool overcoat, a garment that had always felt more like a costume for a life I was pretending to live, and I draped it over his small, shivering shoulders. It swallowed him whole, the sleeves dangling a foot past his hands. I knelt down in front of him to zip it up, to seal in the warmth. And as I did, he looked me directly in the eye, and he spoke. His voice was not the voice of a scared, lost child. It was a quiet, certain, and utterly impossible whisper. "Dad told me you would come." I froze, my fingers still on the zipper, the cold of the night air nothing compared to the sudden, absolute chill that went down my spine. The boy looked at me not as a stranger, not as a threat, but as a long-awaited and entirely expected rescuer. I had never seen him before in my life. My mind, a rational, logical instrument, scrambled for an explanation. He was confused, delirious from the cold. He had mistaken me for someone else, a relative, a family friend. There had to be a logical reason. "What do you mean, buddy?" I asked, my voice a strained, gentle whisper, afraid that any sudden movement might break the fragile, strange spell of the moment. "How did your dad know I was coming? Who is your dad?" He looked at me, not with confusion of a lost child, but with a strange, sad, and unwavering certainty. "My dad is in heaven now," he said, his voice a simple statement of fact, as if he were telling me the color of the sky. "He got really sick, and the doctors couldn't fix him. He had to go." A fresh wave of grief I knew all too well wash over me, a profound empathy for this small, lonely child. "But before he went," the boy continued, his dark, serious eyes fixed on mine, "he told me not to be scared. He told me that after he was gone, I should come here, to our bench, our favorite spot, and I should wait. He said that a man with a sad face, but a good heart, would find me. He said you would be wearing a dark coat, and he said," the boy's voice dropped to a whisper, "that you would know what to do." I stared at him, my heart a wild, frantic drum in my chest. A man with a sad face, a dark coat. It was a description of 100 men in this city on a cold November night, and yet it felt like he was describing the very essence of my own soul. It was a coincidence, a beautiful, heartbreaking, and utterly impossible coincidence. But as I looked into this child's eyes, at his profound and unshakable faith, I knew that it didn't matter what I believed. He believed it. And in his world, a world that had just been shattered by the loss of his father, that belief was the only thing he had left. And I, a man who had lost his own faith in everything, would not be the one to take that from him. "You're right, buddy," I finally said, my own voice a little shaky. "Your dad was right. I'm here now, and I know what to do." My decision was not even a decision. It was a simple, undeniable fact. I could not, would not, leave this child alone. I stood up and took his small, cold hand in my own. "Come on," I said, my voice full of a new and unfamiliar sense of purpose. "Let's get you somewhere warm." The walk to the nearest police station was a quiet, strange, and beautiful journey. He did not ask where we were going. He just trusted me. He held my hand, his small fingers a fragile, trusting weight in my own, and we walked. He told me about his father. He told me his name was Milo. He told me his father loved to draw, and that they would come to this park every weekend to sketch the ducks on the pond. He spoke of his father not with sadness, but with a simple, profound love. He was a little boy who had lost his entire world, but who was still holding on to the beautiful, simple truth of a father's love. When we arrived at the police station, the bright, harsh, and impersonal fluorescent lights of the reception area were a jarring contrast to the quiet, sacred space we had just shared. I explained the situation to the bored-looking desk sergeant, a large, weary man who had clearly seen every kind of human misery. "I found this little boy, Milo," I began, "in the park. He's all alone. He told me his father recently passed away." The desk sergeant looked at Milo, who was now hiding shyly behind my legs, and his weary, professional expression softened with a flicker of genuine sympathy. "Milo, huh?" he said, his voice a low, gentle rumble. He typed the name into his computer. He was silent for a long moment, his eyes scanning the screen, and then his entire demeanor changed. He looked up at me, his face now a mask of a new and very different kind of sadness, a professional pity that was almost worse than his earlier boredom. "Sir," he said, his voice now a low, serious tone. He leaned forward and spoke in a whisper so the boy couldn't hear. "The father, Daniel, He didn't just pass away from an illness a week ago. He jumped from the Archway Bridge 3 nights ago. He then looked past me, his eyes landing on the small, shivering boy who was still clutching the sleeve of my jacket. And he left a note. My own heart stopped. The story, which had been so full of a strange, sad magic, now took a sudden, dark, and much more tragic turn. This wasn't just a story of loss. It was a story of a profound and deep despair. The sergeant picked up his phone. "Yeah, it's me," he said into the receiver. "Get child services down here now. We've got the boy from the Archway Bridge case." As I looked at the small, brave, and completely oblivious boy who had been waiting on a park bench, holding on to the last beautiful promise his father had ever made to him, I had a terrible, sinking feeling that the note that had been left behind, the final words of a broken man, was about to connect our 2 lonely, shattered lives in a way I could never have possibly imagined. A few minutes later, a woman with a kind but deeply weary face entered the station. She was a social worker, and she moved with the calm, practiced efficiency of a person who has spent a lifetime navigating the wreckage of other people's lives. She knelt down and spoke to Milo in a low, gentle voice, her presence immediately putting the terrified little boy at ease. She then turned to me. "My name is Mrs. Davis. The police told me what happened. Thank you for what you did, for bringing him here, for keeping him safe." She gestured to a pair of chairs in a quiet corner. "I need to take your formal statement, if you don't mind. I need you to tell me everything from the moment you found him." And so I told her. I told her about my walk home through the park, about seeing the small, shivering boy on the bench. I told her about giving him my coat. And then, my voice faltering slightly, I told her about the strange, impossible, and prophetic words he had spoken to me. "My dad told me you would come." The social worker, who'd been taking notes with a look of professional detachment, stopped writing. She looked up at me, and her weary, professional mask cracked, revealing a look of pure, stunned disbelief. "He said what?" she whispered. I repeated the boy's words. I told her his story of the man with the sad face but a good heart. Mrs. Davis just stared at me for a long, silent moment, her mind clearly working, connecting a series of dots I couldn't yet see. She then opened the thin, legal-looking file she was carrying. I'm sorry, I didn't get your name." "Adrian," I replied. "Adrian Hayes."
"Mr. Hayes," she began, her voice now a low, careful thing. "The note that the boy's father, Daniel, left behind, it was not a typical note. It was not addressed to his son. It was not addressed to anyone in particular." She pulled a single, folded piece of paper from the file. It was a police photocopy of a handwritten letter. "It was addressed," she said, her eyes meeting mine, "to the stranger on the bench." My own heart seemed to stop. "We couldn't make sense of it," she continued, her voice a whisper. "We thought it was just the final, confused ramblings of a very distressed man. But now," she took a deep, shuddering breath, I think you need to read this." She handed me the piece of paper. The handwriting was a desperate, almost illegible scrawl, the words a testament to a mind on the very brink of collapse. I began to read the final words of a man I had never met, a man whose son was now standing just a few feet away from me. "To the stranger on the bench," the letter began. "If you are reading this, it means 2 things. It means that I am gone, and it means that my last and most desperate prayer in this world has been answered. It means that you exist. I do not know who you are. I only know that you must have a good and decent heart. I am writing this because I am about to do something for which I cannot be forgiven. I am about to leave my son, my beautiful, perfect son, Milo, all alone in this world. The darkness inside me has become too great. I cannot fight it anymore. I have no family left to care for him. He is all I have, and I cannot bear the thought of him being swallowed by the cold, impersonal system of foster care, a lost and forgotten child. And so I have done a foolish and a magical and a terrible thing. I have placed all of my remaining faith, not in God, not in the system, but in the simple and profound goodness of a stranger. I am taking my son to our favorite park bench, and I am telling him a story, a final bedtime story, a story that, after I have gone to heaven, a kind man, a man with a sad face but a good heart, will find him, a man who will know what to do, a man who will keep him safe. I do not know if you exist, you kind stranger. I am betting my son's entire, precious, and beautiful future on the slim, desperate, and utterly insane hope that you do. If you are reading this, it means my faith was not misplaced. It means you came. It means you passed my test. Please, he is a good boy. He loves to draw. He is afraid of the dark, and he is all that I am leaving behind in this world that is good. Please, keep him safe. I finished the letter, and the tears I had not allowed myself to cry for 3 long, empty years finally and completely broke free. I was not weeping for myself or for my own lost family. I was weeping for this man, this stranger, this father, who had, in his final, desperate act, performed a blind, beautiful, and heartbreaking act of faith, and I, a lonely, grieving, and empty man, had been the answer to his prayer. I looked over at Milo, who was now sitting quietly with the desk sergeant, the two of them looking at a comic book. He was safe, for now, and I looked at the social worker, at her kind, sad eyes. He'll have to go into a temporary group home for tonight. It's the law, until we can find a more permanent, long-term foster placement for him. A group home. The system. The very thing his father was so terrified of. I looked at Milo, at his small, trusting face, and I heard his father's final, desperate plea echoing in my own soul. Please, keep him safe. In that moment, I knew my life of quiet, empty, and aimless grief was over. I had been given a new and sacred and profound mission, and it had been given to me by a ghost. No, I said, my voice quiet, but with a new, strange authority that made the social worker, Mrs. Davis, turn and look at me in surprise. "I'm sorry, Mr. Hayes?" she asked. "He's not going to a group home," I said. It was not a request. It was a statement of fact. I folded the letter, the father's last will and testament of faith, and put it in my pocket. "He's coming with me." Mrs. Davis gave me a look of profound and deeply weary professional pity. "Sir," she began, her voice the gentle, placating tone of someone who has dealt with 1,000 well-meaning but naive people before. "I understand. Your heart is in the right place. But that's not how the system works. You are a stranger. You have no legal relationship to this child. There are procedures. There are protocols. He has to be placed in the care of the state." "Then I will become his foster parent," I said, the words coming out of my own mouth before my rational brain had even had a chance to process them. "I'll do whatever it takes. I will take the classes, I will submit to the background checks, I will fill out the paperwork. All of it. But he is not going to spend a single night in a group home. He is going to spend it in a safe, quiet place, with me." She just stared at me. Her expression, a mixture of stunned disbelief and a dawning, reluctant admiration. "Mr. Hayes," she said, her voice now a little less certain. That is an incredibly generous offer, but it is a process, a long one. It could take months." "Then we'll start tonight." The conversation that followed was a long, difficult, and deeply personal one. I did not just make an offer. I laid my own broken and empty life bare for her to see. I told her about my wife, about my own son. I told her about my quiet, empty apartment, about my profound, soul-deep loneliness that had been my only companion for the last 3 years. I was not a perfect man, I told her, but I was a man who understood, in a way that few people could, what this little boy had lost. Her own eyes were shining with unshed tears. She looked from me and then over to the small, quiet boy who was still waiting so patiently. She was a woman of rules, of protocols, but she was also a woman of a deep and profound human empathy. She made a choice. She picked up her phone. She made a call to an emergency judge. She, in her own quiet, professional way, bent the rules. That night, Milo did not go to a group home. He was placed in my temporary, emergency custody. He came home with me. The first few weeks were a quiet, awkward, and beautiful dance of two lonely souls trying to live together. We were two strangers, a broken man and a broken boy, trying to build a new life from the wreckage of our old ones. There were long, silent dinners. There were nights when I would hear him crying softly in his room for his father, and my own heart would break all over again. A phantom pain for a loss I knew all too well. But slowly, day by day, a new, fragile, and deeply precious bond began to form between us. I taught him how to throw a baseball in the same park where I had found him. He, in turn, began to teach me how to live again. He would leave his small, beautiful drawings on my desk for me to find when I came home from work. He would tell me a silly joke he had heard at school, and I would hear myself laugh, a real, genuine laugh, for the first time in 3 years.
My apartment, which had been a quiet gray tomb of memories, was now a home again. It was filled with the sound of a child's laughter, with the smell of burnt cookies, with the beautiful, chaotic, and life-affirming mess of a life being truly and fully lived. The legal process of his adoption was a long and arduous one, but we faced it together. It culminated, a year later, in a quiet, formal hearing in a judge's chambers. The judge, a kind older woman, looked at me over her glasses. "Mr. Hayes," she said, her voice serious, "you have done a remarkable thing, but I must ask you one final time, are you absolutely certain you are ready for this lifelong responsibility?" I looked over at Milo, who was sitting beside me in a small suit I had bought him for the occasion, his small hand clutching my own. He looked at me, his eyes full of a quiet, trusting love, and I felt a sense of purpose so profound, so absolute, it was a physical thing. "Your Honor," I said, my voice clear and steady, "for the last 4 years, since I lost my own family, my life has had no purpose. I have been a ghost. This boy," I said, my hand tightening around his, "he didn't just need me, I needed him. He is not a responsibility. He is my reason to live again. He is my son." The story ends not in a courtroom, but in a park. It is a year later. We are sitting on that same bench, our bench. It is no longer a place of sadness. It is a place of our beginning. Milo is no longer a small, shivering, lonely boy. He is a happy, thriving, and deeply loved 8-year-old, and he is flying a kite, its tail a brilliant splash of color against the bright blue sky. I am no longer a ghost. I am a father. I think of his real father, the man I never met, and his final, desperate, and beautiful act of faith, a prayer sent out into the void. I look at my son, at his joyful, upturned face, and I know, with a certainty that is as warm and as bright as the afternoon sun, that the prayer was answered, for both of them, and for me. An absolutely beautiful and moving story about how two broken souls can come together to create a new family. What a testament to a father's last desperate hope.
Let us know what you think of this incredible emotional story in the comments below. If you are touched by this story of a new beginning, please show your support by hitting that like button and be sure to subscribe for more powerful and heartwarming stories. Don't forget to click the notification bell so you never miss an upload. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.